Hi, I'm Rachel and this is Off.road.cc, and it is finally time for the 2021 Vitus Escarpe review. This is a review of the Vitus Escarpe 29CR. So that's the base spec model in the 2021 lineup, and this one costs a penny under £2,000. We will be reviewing more bikes like this in the future, and ones at this price range too. So if this is your budget, then make sure you subscribe to our channel so you can find us more easily in the future. This bike gets 140mm of travel at the rear, and that is paired with a 150mm fork. There is a whole lineup of Escarpe 29CR bikes, those longer travel trail bikes, although there are only 3 model specifications. So although there's only 3 specs to choose from in the Escarpe range, there are actually 6 bikes, as each model comes in either a 29er wheel size or a 27.5 wheel size. As I said at the start, this bike is £19.99 and 99 pence, and so that's the base spec model in the range, with the range topper getting Fox 36, and that's the Escarpe CRX, which costs £34.99 and 99 pence. All the bikes in the range have carbon front ends and alloy rear, so this makes for a sleek and expensive looking frame, especially at sub 2k. I'm also a massive fan of this grey colourway. It's understated cool, and the bike looks low slung and really purposeful at first glance. The front of the frame gets internal cable routing, although it's not got tube in tube that you get on more expensive like nuke-proof Megas for example, and that tube in tube would help you route the hoses. In the real world though, I didn't experience any rattling, and the routing under the bottom bracket shell and into the rear triangle on this bike wasn't a problem during my test time. So that cable routing sounds like a bit of a mechanic problem to me, something you may or may not have to deal with. Elsewhere, the frame itself gets a flip chip to alter the geometry from high to low, and changing this wasn't as straightforward as you might find on other bikes, so not as simple as in a nuke-proof or a Trek for example. It was a little hard to line up the bolt through the frame, which made insertion and extraction a little tricky. Good points though are a threaded bottom bracket, and also there is rubber frame protection on the down tube and the chainstays. And there is also space in the frame for a large water bottle too. Whether you choose 29 or 27.5 inch wheels, all the models get identical specs between those wheel sizes, and for the same price too. So our CR gets 150mm Marzocchi Bomber fork and a RockShox Deluxe Select R shock, as does the 27.5 inch version. The Bomber Z2 Air fork has 34mm stanchions and is a simple fork that's quick to set up with just a rebound adjustment dial. Marzocchi say that the fork has enhanced lower leg stiffness, and it certainly feels stiffer than maybe the equivalent Fox 34 Rhythm fork would. Our test fork did suffer from some bushing play though, which created quite a noticeable knocking sound in the fork, and something that you could definitely feel when you're riding, especially over rough ground. I spoke to Vitus about this, and they said that if a customer noticed this, then they would either ask them to return the bike to a shop and get the work done to fix the problem, and they would then refund the customer that value, or if it was a warranty problem, which I think is likely in this case, they would organise the return and the replacement of the part. I have ridden this spec of fork once before on a Giant Trance 29, although I think that was a 120mm fork, and didn't experience the same problem in a similar test time and similar test conditions. It's a similar story for the rear shock. So a couple of weeks into testing, saw my rear shock lose all of its damping, so all the rebound damping. Vitus gave me a new shock, and in this case I'm pretty happy to say this is a one-off and just bad luck for me. I've ridden plenty of these Deluxe Select R shocks on the type of bikes that we test at off-road, and I've never had this problem with them in the past. Around the rest of the bike there is a complement of pretty good value parts. There is a whole 12-speed Shimano Dior M6100 drivetrain, and that is a smooth shifting, wide-ranging 1x setup, which is both reliable and a pleasure to use considering it's Shimano's base spec drivetrain. The bikes also come from Shimano stable, and that's in the form of MT420 or 410 brake. The neat trick here is there is a 4-pot caliper on the front and large rotors, so it gets 203 and 180mm at the rear, making these brakes pretty powerful. So whilst the lever feel is a bit wooden, they are going to stop you with no problems at all. The wheels are WTB ST Light I30 rims, which are a great width to fit anything from 2.3 to 2.6 inch tyres, and they've got Vitus own brand hubs for front and rear. As always with Vitus, you get great tyres, and that's something I've come to expect from this brand, and something that impresses me each time. This trail bike is fitted with a Maxxis Assegai 3C Max Terra XO TR 2.5 front tyre. And then it's got a Maxxis Dissector 3C Max Terra XO Plus tyre at the rear. So the combination of the lighter weight XO on the front combined with the tougher carcass XO Plus on the rear is a great shout for some harder riding. The Assegai up front will see you with good grip in most conditions, whilst the faster rolling Dissector is a good mix of more limited rolling resistance and braking grip with a tougher carcass, which proves that it's out of depth really only in very slick, very muddy conditions. There is a short 45mm stem in the predominantly nuke-proof cockpit with a Brand X 150mm dropper post on this medium-sized bike. As you'd expect, the dropper posts are length specific, so over the range of small to extra large bikes they vary in size. From the off, I was pretty keen to ride this sub 2k Escarpe. With the new frame comes also radically overhauled geometry compared to last year's bikes. And as with most of my trail test rides, there's a winch up to start, with the Escarpe showing its hand of cards very early with little pedal bob and a comfy seated position. Much like that nuke-proof Mega I reviewed recently, the steep effective seat tube angle of 77 degrees pays dividends in climbing prowess. This, coupled with a relatively long wheelbase and pretty long chainstays on the Escarpe, means that it's made light work of some rain-ravaged ruts, some horrible rocky climbs, as well as being a smooth operator to spin up fire roads. To be completely honest with you, I'm struggling to think of a 150mm travel trail bike that climbs better than this for the price. Descending on the Escarpe toes the line between a well-connected short travel trail bike with the confidence of an enduro bike. The 140mm of suspension at the rear transmits trail undulations up through to the rider, making sure that you really feel the trail as well as see it, but it's not in a really chattery way. Rather, it feels like really good feedback. It's interesting, it's entertaining, and it will definitely enhance your riding to make sure you pick smooth lines rather than just ploughing through everything. The slack geometry of this trail bike means that if you did want to, it does also plough downhill with purpose too. The Escarpe 29ers get a 65 degree head angle, a 451mm reach and a 410mm seat tube length with a 1218mm wheelbase and 440mm chainstays. That's for this medium sized bike. It's a similar geometry story over at the 27.5 inch bikes too. The Escarpe got a full introduction for the best on and off piste trails near me, where it was a balanced ride. The rear suspension dealing with trail chunk well, and charging into the steep stuff at a great rate. It was easy to push this bike faster downhill, whilst also taking advantage of its sprightly nature on steep uphill pinches in the trail too. There was very little I found the Escarpe wasn't game for, either longer trail centre missions or chasing some long travel e-bikes over natural tech. It takes it all in its stride. Downhill, the bike is pretty stable and it's confidence inspiring. It's really great to see a sub 66 degree head angle on a 140mm trail bike at under £2,000. Progressive geometry makes this a superb base to build from. But that is the pinch point here. Our fork knocking made the riding experience rather muted. It was intolerable both in feel and sound, and would mean a fix or a warranty job and then a break in riding for any potential owners without a substitute fork. That said, the shape of the Vitus Escarpe is an excellent platform for upgrades, and the ride feel I got from this bike makes me think that if you can afford it, you'd be rewarded by the combination of geometry and the pike fork that you get on the Escarpe CRS at £2,699. Although that is a mighty step up in price, that's £700, you do get Shimano SLX, DT Swiss rims with DT Swiss hubs and SLX brakes for the 700. So, as always, what else do you get for under 2k? Well, there's the Marin Rift Zone 2. That one's cheaper, it's $18.45, but it is shorter travel. It's 125mm at the rear and it's alloy. Plus, when I rode one last year, it was really heavy. It is capable though, and the geometry is just as progressive as this bike. There's something that could be said for the Merida 12600, and that is on the cards, but again it's got less travel at 120mm, and if you like the look of the geometry on this Scarpe or something like the Marin, then you are going to be sorely disappointed with the outdated Merida. You could also take a look at the Boardman MTR. The MTR 8.9 is £1,600 and it's a similar spec, but it's not carbon, and as per the Merida, the geometry isn't quite what it is on this Vitus. If you don't mind about buying online, if you're buying a Vitus, you're probably thinking about it, then the YT has the Jeffsy base. Yep, it's an alloy frame again, but you get a Yari fork, SRAM SX, Guide T brakes and DT Swiss wheels. Some of those parts aren't as good as the parts fitted to this bike, but the fork is a hell of a lot better and it's stiffer too. All options considered, the Vitus Escarpe is definitely one to take a look at if £2,000's your budget. The 140mm, 150mm suspension is plenty of travel for anything in the UK, even some racing if you fancy it. And whilst the bike is still plenty capable for long days in the saddle too, it'll also cope with some tech. The 2021 Vitus Escarpe is a ripper of a 29 trail bike. It pedals very well, it depends like a sprightly enduro bike, plus all the bikes have carbon front ends matched with cool colourways for sleek looks. Our base spec model doesn't have the parts with quite the longevity that we'd like, but it is a great starting place for a bike upgrade journey. To really make the most of the platform that this bike provides in terms of its frame, I think that in the future you will want a fork and a brake upgrade to really push the bike to its full potential though. In all though, this is a wallet friendly bike, but some spare cash for a fork upgrade later would really make the most of its capabilities on the trail, and something to think about if you are buying one. If you want to read about this bike or more like it in this price bracket, head over to our website, which is www.off.road.cc. In the meantime, thanks very much for watching. I'll be back with more bikes like this in the month, and in the meantime you can see our latest video, which is Matt's Rondo Rut review, or later in the month there will also be a feature from Liam on how to set up your mullet bike. Catch you soon.